Now we have Professor Jamuna going to talk about creativity and cognition in neuroscience perspective. Professor Jamuna is an additional professor and head, Department of Neuropsychology and Cognitive Neuroscience, NIMHANS. Additionally, she is an adjunct faculty to NIAS.
A very good morning to each one of you. Thank you, Dr. Binoy, for this introduction. At the outset, I wish to thank the organizer, especially Dr. Menon, for inviting me to share this topic on cognition and creativity on neuroscience perspective. Well, if we talk about, I think Dr. Ganesh has given a very beautiful, succinct and elaborate preamble to the creativity, so it's made my job a little more easy. So if you talk about creativity, it is a mysterious quintessence of modern human society. Now, despite creativity being an integral part of human progress, it continues to reside in the mystery box, shielded with the locks of complexity and diversity. Now, creativity, be it scientific or artistic, is an essence of human life. Be it designing a simple consumer product or a missile, I think creativity is involved in that, and it is very well appreciated. However, the process of creativity remains mysterious, as if you talk to the creative individuals as to how they have arrived at a product or a process, they are unable to explain to us. A simple example I would like to take from the first day's talk. Professor Matsuozawa imitated the vocalization of the chimpanzee. I thought that was very creative. Now when I asked him, probably is he very good at imitating? Is it a learned behavior? Did he learn it? Did he listen to it very many times? Or does he have love for the animal? Now he might say all of this has gone into the process. So that's what is creativity. Now if you look at the scientific study, it started in 1950s. And in psychology itself, there are more than 60 definitions. It can be process, it can be person, it can be product. Now, if you look at the definition, the earliest definition was by Sushil Kumar Dey, where he says creativity is that blossoms in an individual with newer and newer forms. It is an ability to come up with ideas of new, surprising, novel and valuable, which is valuable. And it definitely is associated with fields of artificial intelligence, cognitive neuroscience, psychology and philosophy. It is not a specific faculty, but it is an aspect of general intelligence. As I told you, it could be person, process, there could be a need that one has to come up creatively, and it is a product. There are different types of creativity, which I have, for convenience sake, I have divided into artistic and scientific. Now, creativity is a continuum. It is a mini C, a little c, pro C, and a big C. Now, what is this mini C? First time a child draws a square, it is very well appreciated by the parents. So that is the feeling of something the child has achieved. A little c, which a peer and the family members around the person appreciates. Pro C is something where a person has achieved and is well known for that particular invention or that particular creativity. And big C is something where many people have achieved, for example, A.R. Rahman, who is very well known for his music. So this is a continuum. Now if you look at the models of creativity, and this model is very, very applicable even as of date. Wall's model, where he talks about preparation, incubation, illumination and verification. I'll just go with the example. For example, you want to give a good painting to a friend. Now, When you decide to do that, first thing that you would think of is you need a canvas, you need paint, you need what you decide what to paint. Then you go back and forth, which can range from days to years. And then at some point, some illumination occurs. Yes, my friend, I remember her telling that she likes a landscape. Then you decide, yes, I should do a landscape for her and give it to her. And then you verify. You keep verifying, is this what I want to give her? Or is this what she likes? Is this the color she likes? So this process goes on, and it is continuous when you begin the work of creativity. So there is another model which talks about the generative phase and the exploratory phase. In generative phase, one constructs mental representation called the pre-inventive structures, which has various properties that promote creative discovery. In the exploratory phase, the properties are to the fullest exploited during the exploratory phase, in which one seeks to interpret the pre-inventive structures in a meaningful way. There are two types. One is the divergent, convergent. In the divergent thinking, for example, if I ask you to think in different ways a bottle is used, there may be very many people coming up with newer ideas. There may be some. Initially, we exhaust with the natural use of the bottle. And then, if I ask you to think a little further, you will come up with a very creative way of using a bottle. In a convergent thinking, what usually does is, it is associated with words by forming a compound word or a semantic association. For example, square, cardboard, and open. Now, if I ask you to use these words and come out with a compound structure, you will tell me it is a box. So this is what is the divergent and the convergent thinking. Creativity and intelligence. Well, if you look at the creativity is not an independent entity. It definitely requires expression of a higher level of intelligence. But however, when we look at people who are highly intelligent, not highly intelligent people are all creative. Now, what is important in this intelligence is the convergent thinking, or the analytic modes of thinking, which the intelligent test taps. So if you look at this graph, it plateaus after a point. After 120 IQ, it plateaus. So it is not that people who are highly intelligent are all creative. Intelligence doesn't blossom without, creativity doesn't blossom without intelligence. Intelligence is required at a certain level. Now, creativity and cognition, there is exhaustive studies carried out on creativity and cognition, definitely not on creative people, but on young adults and college-going students. They have found that the structures that is responsible are the prefrontal cortex, dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the precuneus, and the learning and memory, the perception, etc. So, the creative thinking also includes some basic process like definitely attention, perception, learning, and memory. Creativity and personality is another aspect where people have studied, and they have found that openness to experience is positively correlated with creativity. This is one of the many studies have come out with this findings that openness to experience is one of the trait which is seen in a creative individual. Now, I went through some of the review articles and I came across 3 articles. Now, I'll summarize what these 3 articles have said. All 3 articles have criticized creativity in a big way. The reason is, firstly, the creativity studies are carried out not on creative individuals. It is carried out on normal individuals who are young adults and college students. And the kind of tests that be it psychometric test or the imaging is varied from one study to another study. They have summarized that 20 structures in the brain have mediated creativity. Each study focuses on certain aspects of it, maybe because of the methodological, the flaws that they have in their own, inherent in their own studies. Because the kind of, for example, when I do a study, when I did a study, I used a standardized method of standardized creativity test. And some person will just put the person in the scanner and ask them to read or write. So these are one aspect of the cognition that they have studied in the scanner, and that is where all these three articles have said that creativity, and that is why today creativity is not where it has to be. So what we know, it is an eminence as a de facto criteria, that is, in practice or actually, it is there present in actuality, but not officially established. As we know, most of the retrospective studies have not been carried out on creative individuals. And there is an inherent problem of defining creativity and identifying creative individuals. And there is a dearth of empirical studies exploring the association between creativity, cognitive functions, and the brain areas. And there is inconsistent results due to the variability in the assessment tools. So what we don't know. So what makes creative artists different from other individuals? Is it the cognitive function? Is it their personality attributes? Or that the creative artists are very unique? And what happens when a creative artist performs a task inside the scanner? Is it because of the restriction that they face in the scanner that they are not able to come out with a creative idea? How is creativity related to intelligence and other cognitive functions? What are the personality substrates of creative process itself? And are artists really different from other people altogether? And if so, what makes them unique? Is the personality affected by the cognitive process itself? This was the guiding principle for us to carry out a research at NIMHANS looking at the brain correlates of creativity. Now here I wish to I'm very indebted to Department of Science and Technology. After a very long time, after persuading for a long time, I got a funding from the Department of Science and Technology, Cognitive Science Initiative, and people associated with this, we have come out with a PhD because of their funding. Dr. Divya, who's here with us, she's also looked into creativity and madness. She's done this particular study even on bipolar individuals. Dr. Sanjeev Jain, who's a psychiatrist from NIMHANS, Dr. Sendil Kumaran from AIMS, who's an NMR specialist, and Dr. Tena Rasu, who's a biostatistician who helped us in the analysis, and Dr. Rajneesh, Sundar, Rajnikant, Hari Om, and Hari Krishna Maya are all my research scholars who helped this study to be carried out. So with this in mind, we set out to carry out the study. What was the objectives? To identify the brain areas implicated in creativity, compare the activations across two groups, that is creative group and the non-creative group, to study the creativity and cognitive functions both behaviorally as well as through the imaging, and to study creativity and personality. Well, the group was very homogeneous. We matched them for age, education, and gender. One-to-one matching we have done so that we get a better results. Now, behavioral study was carried out on 30 individuals, 30 creative group and 30 non-creative group, but whereas the imaging was done only on 20 due to the restrictions of funding. Now, there are certain scales that we kept in mind. Yes, behaviorally we wanted to see the cognitive functions of both these groups, creative groups and the non-creative groups. How we identified the non-creative group is we gave them a questionnaire called the Creative Achievement Questionnaire, where the cutoff score, there was a certain cutoff score, and above the cutoff score was a creative person, below the cutoff non-creative, and we also identified creative artists, that is the PRO-C, where I spoke about the continuum of the creativity. The Pro-C group, we approached them and then we got them for our study. So the behaviorally, we administered all these some questionnaires, as well as, and for personality, we took a Neo-5 personality scale, where we administered the scales as well as the selected neuropsychological test, which addresses several domains, right from the mental speed to the executive functions, that is the category fluency, visual fluency, verbal working memory, visual working memory, planning, set shifting, response inhibition, and we went on to study their learning and memory as well. So we looked into verbal learning and memory and visual learning and memory. And this was administered to both the groups, that is the creative and the non-creative group. And we designed a paradigm, the block design paradigm, using the Wallach and Krueger creativity test. This is a very standardized test which has both verbal and visual material. The verbal material, for example, there are around, as I told you, we also address the divergent thinking. We could not do the convergent thinking. We went on to study the divergent thinking. So we administered this particular in the scanner while for the creative group as well as the non-creative group. Now you can see there are this is the visual test. Now the person has to tell us what this particular line reminds him or her of. So this they can tell the round things, what are the round things that is existing, and also we give an instruction to come out with something new, novel. Now the procedure for the main study, what we did was we took only the creative, the artists, not the scientific creative people. We took only the artists from various fields, from the visual field, from dancers to the musician. We also did an intelligence test. As I told you, intelligence was very important to understand creativity. We saw that the creative group were significantly higher as compared to the non-creative group. And even on neuropsychological profile, if you look at this is the test of speed, the creative, the lower the score, the better is their performance. And this is the executive functions, right from fluency, planning, set shifting, and working memory. Now you see creative people have done much better than the normal group. Even on tests of creativity, this is the behavioral data, where we see creative people have done much better than the non-creative group. And personality, as the studies have shown, openness to experience is the one which stands out in the creative group. We also saw the openness to creativity being significantly better as compared to the non-creative group. Now, if you look at the summary on all tests, in terms of cognition, we saw the creative group's intelligence being better, the mental speed being better, attention, all the other executive functions, and learning and memory being better as compared to the non-creative group. And personality, we saw openness to experience was standing out. Now we go into the fMRI study that we carried out. This is the voxel-based morphometry where we did, and what came out? We saw increased gray matter volume in the creative group in bilateral inferior frontal gyrus. I'll come to the next one when I talk about the fMRI itself, individual structures I will be talking about. Bilateral medial frontal gyrus, bilateral superior frontal gyrus, right posterior cingulate, bilateral precuneus, bilateral anterior cingulate, bilateral temporal gyrus, bilateral lingual gyrus, and bilateral cerebellum. Now this is the fMRI between the creative and the non-creative group. What did we see? Creativity is mediated by a network of brain regions, that is the bifrontal, medial frontal gyrus, anterior cingulate, bilateral superior parietal lobule, bilateral precuneus, bilateral superior temporal gyrus, bilateral occipital lingual gyrus, and bilateral cerebellum. Now, this is the bilateral frontal gyrus. The function that it is involved is in attention, verbal fluency, working memory, and episodic long-term retrieval. It is also involved in self-reflection and decision-making process. So you see, this was seen very clearly in the creative group. Anterior cingulate. It is an error detection and conflict monitoring area. And this was seen in the creative group. The precuneus. It is largely implicated in mental imagery concerning the self with the posterior areas involved in the episodic memory. Bilateral superior temporal gyrus. This is the one. And if you see, this is involved in bringing together remote and unconnected connections. And the bilateral occipital lingual gyrus. And this activation has been linked to encoding of complex images. So especially with no human faces. So this was also implicated in our study. Cerebellum, we found that it plays a very significant role in creativity through working memory. And this was also highlighted in the creative group. So what we did was, we came up, we wanted to develop a model, how this creative process happens from the neuroscience perspective. First, yes, there must be general intelligence, which leads to efficient processing, and efficient processing leads to focused attention on a single task, and that leads to generation of many alternatives, because creativity requires a lot of alternatives, and that leads to better cognitive flexibility, and which in turn has retrieval of semantic and concepts, and integration takes place. And that leads to mental manipulation of the alternatives, which has a better conflict resolution, and hence there is an emergence of creative idea. This is the model that we had come up with. Now, the future direction. There's so much of, as I told you initially itself, creativity is not where it has to be today. There's so much of criticism, and all these criticisms are well justified, and they have elucidated the pitfall in the research. What we must realize that sometimes the only way to reach somewhere is continue walking. Every time we fall, we learn more from our mistakes and move further towards our goal. Even in terms of research in intelligence, it has taken 100 years. The same path as the creativity is going through, intelligence has also gone through. And today we are in a better position with a better test that we can measure intelligence. And I think creativity has just crossed 50 years. Maybe we need to wait to see creativity in a better limelight in the next coming years. And the next idea that we are floating along with NIAS is that we want to look at, because even in the consciousness study, the studies have shown that the similar areas are implicated. So we want to see and create a consciousness, cognition, culture, and at some point I think we need to add in the title creativity. Thank you.
Questions we will take later. Questions will be taken in the discussion session.
Thank you.
Thank you, madam, for a very interesting talk. Next we have Frank Krueger, who is going to talk about the emerging neuroscience of third-party punishment. Professor Frank is an associate professor and chief, Social Cognition and Interaction Functional Imaging Laboratory, co-director, Center for the Study of Neuroeconomics, Krasnow Institute for Advanced Study, George Mason University, USA. Additionally, he is an adjunct faculty to National Institute of Advanced Studies. Frank.
Yeah, thank you for the nice introduction. So I would like to talk today about my field, social cognition, and I want to pick one special part out of it, neuroscience of third-party punishment, of social norm violations. To put it in a better context, first I want to tell you what the mission of my lab is. So I call it a sci-fi lab, and I want to focus on social cognition and interaction and using functional imaging methods. So when we talk about social cognition, we're thinking about what do I mean when I recall information about another person, I read the mentalizing about the other person, and also I trust another person. So these are the topics I'm interested in. How is empathy encoded in the brain? Why do we develop a theory of mind compared to other species? What are our belief systems about free will, etc., how they code it in the brain? And that's related how other people trust, how moral our brain is, how moral we are. And today I want to focus on the third-party punishment. So this is the mission. We want to try to surely measure behavior, see what kind of cognitive processes are involved, and then our main focus is on imaging. So we're using functional imaging, we're using FNIRS, and also we have a value data set, we're using lesion data. So we have access to Vietnam head injury studies, patients which went to to the Vietnam War, and they got a penetrating head injury, and they have specific lesion, and we can use this approach to verify some fMRI results. And then sometimes we're also using on the hormone neurotransmitter level, and I will show you later a study about oxytocin, how this promotes social cognition, and then if it's possible, also genetics underfound. So the whole idea is, so how are those components work together, how the neuroplasticity works, and what is the neural underpinnings about how nature influences, what is environment, and now also on, and I hope with this visit and with this conference, we also can push a little bit in the direction of culture differences. So this is the outline of the talk, the next 30 minutes. So first I want to define what do we mean by third-party punishment. I want to give you some psychological components. And then I want to show you a bunch of experiments we did or others to give you background information about this, and then coming to a higher level again, giving a conclusion and then an outlook. So first the background. So why I'm interested in, and this is more like very high level now, but we have a social dilemma. And we talked about it already, right? Based on the social brain hypothesis, we are very social creatures. We have developed specific parts, especially as also mentioned in creativity, the prefrontal cortex is well developed if you compare to other species. And those areas are not just have more neurons, we have more hardware, but also those areas are much more better connected to other brain areas. And that gives us huge advantage. We can plan ahead, we can be very social, we can be very cooperative. But on the other hand, that also creates a problem. We're very clever, but we can also deceive each other, right? And there's always a trade-off between me and the society, and I have to find the right balance. And society sometimes have to give me some boundaries, because if we're all free riders, then cooperation society wouldn't work. So I'm interested in how that works together, and how can that measured be in the brain. So what the problem is, remember like 30,000 years ago, we had these kind of social networks. We had only groups where we're living together with 150, 500, 1,500 people. But nowadays, right, this is New York City, millions of people there, all have to follow some rules, that we have some kind of social life, some interactions. And that's I'm interested in. And one way to ensure that we behave cooperatively is third-party punishment. So what are the definitions? This is the cartoon I'm just using now over and over to demonstrate what I'm talking about. So first of all, this is a third party. This is, let's say, an example. There's a social norm violation going on. There's an offender, and he is harming another person. So we have here the offender. We have the victim. He's harming the other one. And this is the third party observing this social violation. And now he wants to enforce the norm, don't harm anybody, right? So each of us has social norms. We develop them over our life. In the beginning, right, we have universal norms. You shall not kill. You shall not harm other people, right? This is the golden rule. Behave as you want to be treated by others. But also specifically for social economics interaction, we have rules like to be fair, don't steal from others, and don't cheat. Those rules are encoded now, and what happens is actually we're pretty good on this, picking this up. And also what I want to argue now the next 20 minutes, we have a pretty much good urge to punish norm violation, because this is hardwired in our social brains. That's why we are social beings. And when I talk about second-party punishment, it's the slogan would be, you harm me, I punish you, right? This is third party, the victim would get on the offender. But now this is a trick for our society that we develop third party punishment. I punish you because you harm somebody of my group, in our social group. So what we're taking out here is the harm factor, right? I'm not personally affected. I'm impartially involved. I can think about this, and I can make the right conclusion. Did he broke the social rule? Does he have to punish? It looks for you funny right now, but 30,000 years ago, that was very important that we cooperate to survive, right? And even if we punish somebody and banish them out of group, that also was a big loss for us, because there's one person less helping us hunting, etc. So try imagine yourself like 30,000 years ago. Nowadays, we also punish in social interaction, but this is the driving force. And what I want to stress also, we still have those brains for 30,000 years ago. We are hardwired like those. And if we see social norm violation, you also want to engage those brain areas and you punish. So this is the only mechanism. They argue there's models that third-party punishment can explain why we are cooperative on a high level, on a very society level. People are not genetically connected to each other. There are other mechanisms like kin selection, right? I can maybe behave cooperatively because I want to help my kin, right? But normally we are all genetically not related in a kin sense, so that cannot explain the mechanism, right? Another mechanism would be a reciprocal altruism. So I help you today, you help me tomorrow. But our groups are so big, we don't even keep track out when you help me. That might not help. The other one is that I built like a repetitive reciprocity, so I just behave cooperative today, and you see it, and later maybe help me. Also, most of our life, we behave socially with other people we never see again in our whole life, right? So what they argue is this strong reciprocity is a factor that we can keep up those kind of cooperation. And this is also the basis of our modern system of the criminal justice, right? So we have justice, we have a court, etc., which means if there's a criminal offense, that people will get punished. So this, as I said, the third party is pretty unique for humans. They did these kind of experiments. They tried to simulate with some chimpanzees and others because they have smaller groups. They never have to develop these kind of art. So we are the only ones which are doing this kind of third-party punishment. And what comes into this place also, kids are already pretty good. Starting with 4 years, they're switching, and they can also do third-party punishment. And that has to do something that we develop theory of mind. So it's not just me. I can take a perspective of another person. That's why I can do this kind of theory of mind. And it doesn't matter, it's all over the place in the earth, right? If it's in my hometown in Germany, it's on my university in the US, or it's here. If norms are validated, broken, people want to punish them. And I'm interested in where does it happen in the brain. So why is it important? So I talked already that's important for criminal law, and I also work with judges together to get a sense about it. It's also important about philosophy, right? If we have free will, should I punish somebody? If he doesn't have free will, there's no punishment, right? Because everything was predetermined. Social psychology is important. Do we punish differently in-group, out-group? We know that. What are the factors? And also, this is interesting, psychiatry, right? There are some diseases, they don't even can take the mental stance of the other person, like autism, so that's why they cannot punish. Or other groups, they don't even see the norm violation. Borderline patients, etc., they don't see the norms. Psychopaths, they don't learn the norms. They don't see there's a norm violation, and that's why they don't get punished, and they also get in trouble because they will get punished because they broke the law, right? And my focus is here, and this I want to do the next 20 minutes. So what are the underlying underpinnings of this? So to study this, right, this is very abstract. So now we have to bring it down on a concrete level. We need an experiment. One is we can use these kind of ratings where we give them criminal offenses. Maybe take a minute and read them. This is a very extreme one, and this is a typical example we would use in the US. There's always an offender, John, he's doing something, and this is pretty tough here, what he's doing. And this is a situation, right? There's a norm violation that somebody harms somebody. There's a third party, there's an offender, in this case it's John, there's always a victim. And now what happens is, this is the psychology behind it. Basically, we're punishing based how much we blame. And we blame based on two factors. Was there a guilty act? Is somebody harmed in this case? And did he do it intentionally? Was there a guilty mind? So in our case, humans, we pay attention of intention. If people did it by accident, we don't punish that much as if they would do it by attempted harm, for example. And those are now our factors, basically. We punish, we have the guilt, this is the harm to the victim, we have our intention, this is related to the offender, and that has to be combined, that we blame, and we blame very often in our life, right? We don't punish, we just blame, oh, why is he doing this, blah, blah, we're complaining, right? But then you have to do an extra step, you have to punish the person, right? You have to choose the right punishment to fit the crime. In older times, right, there was like tit for tat. If you killed somebody, I can take maybe somebody from your group and I can kill them. I mean, those times are over, but this kind of stuff, yeah? I mean, so now, we are not the first one, but basically there's a lot of studies now, and this is the model I want to promote to you, that these components have concrete underlying neural networks. And this is based, the first one now, there's our salience network. So these are the areas, and you haven't heard them also in other contexts during the conference, right? So this is coding harm, the salience network, and typical areas are the amygdala, the insula, and also the ACC. So first, I have to see that there was a guilty act. There has to be a norm violation. I have to be sensitive for it, that somebody got hurt. The other factor is intention. And this is what they call the default network or the theory of mind network, where I have to see what was the intention of the offender, right? What was the goal and what was the outcome? And this has to be combined. And here comes into the play that the key rule of our prefrontal cortex. So we are able to live in the future, in the past, and in the present. We can think ahead, we can travel back. Other animals cannot do this. So what we do is we can combine information. This is especially the medial prefrontal cortex. And this upper part is, it's combining what was the goal of the offender. The other one, the ventromedial, is more connected to the limbic areas, and there it codes what was the outcome. So I basically internally see, why did he do it? What's the goal? Did he get harmed? I put this together, I blame the person, and then the next network kicks in, and this is the punishment networks. And this is basically, we heard it also in a creativity talk, is the executive network, and these are the areas, lateral prefrontal cortex, but also parietal areas for attention. So this network, I want to prove you now that it comes over and over in studies, and I want to give you 2 examples, or actually 3. And this is a study we finished recently and got published. So basically, and I want to now involve you also a little bit, that you do these kind of tasks. So we use these kind of different harm scenarios, right? It could be easy ones, low harm, theft by taking, but it gets pretty much extensive. Robbery, kidnapping, rape, murder, and torture. And the question is now, these are the scenarios, the intent was obviously purposely, John did it on purpose, but what we changed was the harm. So there was like scenarios, there was low harm to the victim, there was high harm to the victim. And then this is an example for like on a low harm. I think when you would ask here, how much would you, John, punish for this, you would put it here. Punishing is 0 to 100, right? But later we ask them, what does 0 means for you? What means 100, right? Maybe a girl, you have to pay money, you have to go to sentence, three days in prison, etc. And also in the US, the extreme would be death penalty. Right? So we would ask that afterwards. And this correlates pretty much good between how much you punish and what kind of punishment you will give. And that would be on the other extreme. People get very upset of that, very emotional. They would punish John for this. And on the top of that, we wanted to argue, right? We have all these belief in free will. We think we are doing what we're doing. And it's important that we're talking about belief in free will, right? I have a belief that what I'm doing is I'm the owner of my actions, right? It doesn't mean free will exists, but what has been shown over and over, that if I change the belief in free will, I change pro-social behavior. People, I can prime them to be more deterministic and they behave more amorally, right? So we are interested in how do people punish differently if they believe in free will and not in free will, in determinism. And then also we separated this in low and high harm effect. And then we have a 2x2 design. We want to see what is going on in the brain. Do believers in free will code the information differently? And we had some control measures. So what we're using is this fMRI. And just one slide. It's a byproduct, right? This is our neuroactivity. We don't measure that. We have a byproduct, which is the blood oxygen level dependent signal. It's a hemodynamic response. If you're using your brain, the brain is using up glucose, oxygen. That changed the proportion of oxygenated, deoxygenated hemoglobin. That changed the parametric properties of that area in the brain, and I can pick that up with my fMRI machine. And remember, milliseconds neuroactivity, and if you measure the bold, and this is the disadvantage of this one, it takes 6 seconds to peak. So it's a very slow signal, but it pretty much nicely correlates to the neuroactivity. So what did we find on the behavior level for the study? And remember, we had the 2x2 design, low effect crimes, high effect crimes, deterministically. And this is what you would expect here, right? People who believe more in free will would punish more because they think John is responsible for their own acts, right? Interestingly, the determinists, they still punish, but there was a difference. And when you measure this and analyze it now in a brain area, what comes out is the right TPJ, the temporal parietal junction. That's a typical area to infer the intention of another person. So if you believe in free will, you activate those areas much more and put more thinking about what John is doing. And then this area that's why more activated. But now comes the punchline. It doesn't matter if you believe in free will or not. If I show you a norm violation which is very harmful, and it includes harm, murder, etc., it doesn't matter what you believe, you punish the same. So this is, again, the message is we are primed to punish norm violation. We get emotion involved. Cognition, forget it. This was unfair, he should get punished. And those differences disappear now, right? And what we see is that we see in both groups that there's high activation of the anterior. This is the area of norm indication. As I said, this is the harm indicator. Yeah? So that shows you that you can use this kind of paradigm and also tweak it and ask questions about beliefs in free will, etc. Then we replicate this kind of data set. What I said is we have access, and what we did is a lesion study. So remember, we have these Vietnam veterans. They went to war, and they got shrapnel in their head. They got shot, they survived, but still the shrapnel is still in their brains. They have focal brain lesion differently, small enough to survive. If it would be a big one, they wouldn't survive, right? So you cannot do fMRI, you have to do a CT scan, and we have roughly 114 of those, and then we have 32 controls. Those are also soldiers who went war, and luckily they didn't get a penetrating head injury. And what we can do now, it's a nice method, and this is a nice data set. We can overlay all the lesion of the patients, and we get this lesion map here. And basically, we cover the whole brain. And now we can also run a kind of statistic analysis. So what area are associated with my third-party punishment? And we see here that in this case, they had to do a rank ordering of these kind of scenarios, that same areas popping up as in an fMRI experiment. It's not so important what areas, but it's a nice proof. Remember, if you do fMRI, it's a correlate. And it's also depending on what kind of control condition. The brain is always active, so I have to do a contrast, experimental condition, control condition. Depending on that one, I get different brain areas. But if you have a brain lesion somewhere and cannot perform the task, you can make causal relationship about third-party punishment, etc. Another example, so remember, there's a difference between blaming, what we argue, and punishment. So can we disentangle both? So what we did is an oxytocin study, same paradigm. Right, they read the scenarios, and this time they had to punish either or have to say how much harm was inflicted to the victim, right? 2 scales this time. And again, 2x2 design, so we had to punish harm, or how much harm was, let's change a little bit now. So this is one scale punishment, the other one is how much harm was inflicted on the victim. And then we had 2 groups, oxytocin group and the placebo group. And then control measures. So what is oxytocin? You have heard about it. It's a hormone. It's also a neurotransmitter. It's in the media, at least in the US. It peaked and it's already gone. And you can buy it also if you want. Basically, it's a natural hormone, and it's mostly known for women, for lactose, etc. But it plays a role in our whole life, not just only in women, also in men. It is called the birth hormone, the cuddle hormone, the bonding hormone, the love hormone. So it keeps us connected with other people. If you touch another person, oxytocin gets released, or you see the baby face of your baby, it gets oxytocin. That helps us to bind to another person. And what happens is, like, it gets produced in the hypothalamus, and then it gets released as a hormone, but also it gets released through axons to different parts of the brain, which are connected with oxytocin receptor genes, and those are the areas, the emotional, affective areas. Right? And we have intrinsically oxytocin, but what you can do now is I give you a little dose more. And this is like the intranasal oxytocin study we're doing. And there's a model, and there's studies out there. You can Google them, 300 more studies about how oxytocin influences our pro-social behavior and interaction. Basically, we give it externally, And there's different factors. It's just on and off, right? But it influences at the end social cognition and prosociality, trust behavior, fairness, and here would be like mentalizing. And it's dependent on the context, right? It's not on and off, right? If you have a different context, in-group, out-group, you punish maybe more the out-group than the in-group with oxytocin. It's depending on your individual differences, right? How you have different internal oxytocin. If you have a disease, for example, autism don't have a good much oxytocin receptors, those factors play in. But the mechanism is like three that propose, right? Oxytocin change the salience of stimuli. I get more aware of them. It reduced my anxiety. I'm more willing to approach in a social interaction. And I also got bonded with the other person. And that might change social cognition and personality, prosociality. So we did this now. There's two groups. They don't know which one they got. And this is our 2-2 design, punishment and harm. And we were surprised. But what happened is oxytocin doesn't change punishment. It changed your empathy for the victim. So you see it's more, you feel more empathic now with a person. And that makes sense because they make difference between cognitive empathy and affective. So oxytocin is triggering more the affective part. And that was surprising. So basically it shows also it can be distinguished between punishing because they punish the same, but now they feel more empathic to the victim. So this is one paradigm. I talked to now, we're using other paradigms. And this is like the economic game paradigms, and I like those because you can set up social interaction. And one of the game is the dictator game, and I would like that you play it with your partner to understand it. I give you $12, 12 euros, whatever it is, 12 monetary units, and your goal is split it and give it to the other person, and the other person has to accept it. Please do it, roughly. How much would you give to your person, to the other person? And the other person has to accept it. Internally, how much you would say? Half, it's too much. People give like 8-4. That was a good one. Then you are right. If you do give everything, you're too pro-social. That's not good also, right? But nobody gives 0, right? We all give money. Why, right? And I want to know why that happened in the brain. So you can set up the brain now, the games differently because we want to build the third-party punishment paradigm. So now the same, a different game. I have $12. I can split them. But now the other person can accept. Do I accept the split, yes or no? So let's say I do a 10-2 split. I keep 10, I give you 2. Would you accept it? Yes? Okay, then I get the 10, you get the 2. If you say no, no deal. No money get exchanged. And this is the kind of second-party punishment, right? Because I can punish you because you broke the fairness rule. If you got money from the experimenter, you should give me at least $2 or $3, right? So this is a second-party punishment. And now we want to do the third-party punishment. Basically, another person is observing this kind of social interaction, and now I have my own resources, and I can punish the proposer. Same thing. He has 12, he splits 10-2, and now I think it's unfair. I'm using my own money and punish the proposer, and I give up some of the money and get deducted from that person. And this we can measure a kind of third-party punishment with a kind of economic game paradigm. And this, again, it's done over, we did recently a meta-analysis. It's like 20 studies where you ask what areas on average are lighting up with this kind of paradigm. And these are the same as I proposed before. This is the model, but now it's a different norm, right? We have punishment, third party on the economic game, but this time we don't measure harm norm, we measure fairness norm, right? Because how fair is it, the split? And again, intention, fairness, same network. I want to give you also an example how we measure it and how you see the areas. Let's say we did an experiment, which I explained before, third party, norm violation. He gives a split, fair, unsplit, he can punish. He can use money to punish the person. And now we want to see actually what happens if other people are also there and can punish. So what do you think? And that's what they call is diffusion of responsibility. You punish another person, third party, and now there are 2 or 3 other people there, and they have the same rules. They can also punish the other person. What happens? Are you punishing more or less? Less, right? What's going on in your mind? What would you say? Basically, what people would say is, it's not me alone again, right? The other people there should also chip in, right? And that's why I reduce my punishment. Other people punish, and that together punish the person. And we are interested in how this now changing the brain networks, right? So what we see is now behaviorally it works. So we're focusing on, remember, it's a 2x2 design. I'm punishing alone in a group, and we're only focusing on the unfair here, right? So I punish more or less. Punishment gets reduced when I punish alone versus when I punish in a group. And also I feel less responsible. That was our argument, that people have a diffusion of responsibility. They don't think other people should also chip in as a norm. We all together punish that person. And that's why responsibility rating went down. And then we run a kind of mediation analysis, and we could show that actually that punishing my responsibility rating are actually causally driving my punishment. So this is an argument on the behavior level, and now we did it on the fMRI level. And remember, again, you don't know this area, but these are the same I showed you before in the model. And when you do now the interaction effect, so I'm asking now what happens in the brain when I switch from a lone condition to the group condition, what areas are now sensitive? And again, we found key areas which I proposed before. And the most important area is the left-right anterior insula. This is the indicator. If I could pick you out, and I don't even see the game, I measure you in a scanner, I see how high your insula is activated, I can tell you how much you will punish and if you will punish. This is the first indicator. It's like an arousal, emotional one, like you can call it anger, whatever it is. You get upset about the situation. And the more unfair somebody gets treated, the more upset you get, right? And these mostly is left-right, but they showed that the right insula is the most one. It's involved. But now also there's other areas. Remember, from alone to the group, you have to change your thinking, the goal. I'm not punishing alone now, I punish with other people. And that is now mediated by brain areas in the prefrontal cortex. And again, our dorsal medial prefrontal cortex and our ventral medial, and then also the precuneus. And now you can ask, actually, and that's a nice way, you know, not just have brain areas, so how they talk to each other. What you can do is a kind of connective analysis. You're asking what areas are talking to the other one, influencing, so you can see a causal relationship. And what you can run is a kind of effective connectivity analysis. And remember, we did this for the 5 regions we found. And this is now when I punish alone. And this is the brain from the top. These are my brain areas I found. And you see that the insula is the driving force of that network. If you punish alone, the idea is you get upset, you want to punish it. I tell all the other brain regions, unfair, calculate, blame, blah, 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 punish. Yeah? This is because this is the driver. And now it changed. If I am the group condition, I'm changing the context. The prefrontal cortex is adjusting to the situation, and now the dorsal medial prefrontal cortex is the driver. Changing the goal. I'm not alone anymore. Anybody else should chip in. Don't get upset. Insula, don't punish so much. So that's why the dorsal medial prefrontal cortex is bringing other areas down. Yeah? This is a nice way to see how not just brain area lighting up in networks, but also how they communicate to each other. So this would be the summary of this study. We show that diffusion of responsibility is changing based on the situation, and behaviorally we say punishment is changing, and on the brain activation we have key areas from the network I was proposing, insula for salience, dorsal medial prefrontal for goal, and I showed you there's a top-down, bottom-up propose I can measure with effective connectivity. So the home take message is, there's an underlying network, it doesn't matter what kind of social norm you measure. First, I blame. I blame somebody because he did it on intention and how much he got harmed. It's interesting, kids until 4 years, they still punish on harm. And then theory of mind kicks in, and they're reading the intention of the person, and they see that the person did it intentionally, then it changed. Also, if I would zap out your temporal parietal junction, which is reading the intention one, you would also punish now under harm. So this is, you can see that you can also change the network, right? And you can actually rule it back when you were a child. So remember, there's one key area measuring the outcome, the guilt act. This is our salience network. There's another one bringing the pieces together about the intention. Then you combine both, you blame, and based on the blame, you're choosing the right appropriate punishment. And this is a punishment network. So a couple more minutes. So what we want to do now in the future, remember, it's science, never perfect. Right, we showed you now the whole model and 2 norms. One was harm norm, right? Don't harm another person. John was harming the person, right? Killing, shooting, beating. And the other one was the fairness norm, right? It was an economic game. It's about money. I saw a fairness norm violation because John, for example, didn't split right the money. He kept all the money, right? So now you can ask, does it all hold for other norm violation? I think so, but that has to be proven. Remember, we also only choose intent. Purposely. John did it always on purpose, right? You can frame the scenario differently, that he did it accidentally, attemptedly, so you can change the intention. That would change the network. And also maybe there has to be a better paradigm. Right now we're using these kind of offenses as games. But this is now what we want to do now in our research line is, right? What are the different norms? What is the offender actually, right now we only scan that person, right? What is the offender actually doing in the brain when he gets punished? It's interesting. What is different between second and third party punishment, right? Remember, I was arguing second party punishment, you're much more engaged. I go out there, you push me in, I get emotionally aroused. I'm gonna say, what's going on, right? I'm very emotional, right? I may be more willing to punish, right? I don't even think about it. Was it intentionally from you, etc.? Third party, you're impartially, you're not involved. You can much more using your higher order cognitive resources to make a judgment. And then it's interesting, the whole idea about what we call first party punishment, second party punishment, third party punishment. And this is the punchline, basically, how nature tricks us that we behave cooperatively. First of all, it's first party punishment. I have the social norm in my head. I feel guilty, for example, if I break the law. That's the first protection, that I might behave cooperatively. The second one is, if I hurt you, I have to assume that you also punish me back. Maybe if I hurt you personally, second party, and then I also know government or society kicks in and punishes me on a society level, puts me in prison, takes me out of the society. So basically our society works well because we have these three different brain mechanisms in there. And they're all in the same areas, but they are from different angles, right? I feel guilty because my insula lights up, because I broke the norm. Here, I observe that he broke the law, my insula goes up because I feel with him, because he was hurt, or he did, yeah? So it's basically, and we are interested in how all this get pieced together. Just some acknowledgements. This is our lab over there. And then it's very important to have these kind of collaborations. This is Kevin McCabe, it's an economist. So he developed, for example, the trust game. So I'm working with him about how we can make better economic paradigms. This is the judge I'm working in. So he's a trial judge in the US, and actually he puts people on death penalty, etc. And he's interested also in the brain. It's very rare that you have a judge who's interested in only what happened in the brain. And check out, he has a very good book, The Punisher's Brain, where he explains how sometimes these kind of processes goes on when he's doing the third-party punishment. This is my mentor, Jordan Greffman. I'm working together with a warfighter head injury study with a lesion. This is Mary Lee. In the US, you need somebody who has access to the oxytocin studies, right? It's kind of drug, so you have to have collaborators. And then I'm also working together with philosophers. So this is Henrik Walter. He's a psychiatrist and also a philosopher interested in how beliefs in free will are changing our punishment. That's pretty much everything. Thank you very much.
To begin with. I'm not sure if this is valid, but yeah, I guess, yeah. So let's say if I'm a scientist and if I'm not creative at all, how do I even recognize creativity when so I guess that's my question.
Some of the pitfalls of the creativity study itself. This is some of the pitfalls of the creativity studies itself. That is why we very carefully chose artists alone, not the scientists. Now, if you look at even an artist, a musician may not be very well versed in the visual art. So what we want, and the tests are very standardized tests. So probably in future, what we need to do is take a group of people, which, for example, if it is musicians, maybe we'll have to, in the scanner itself, give some music, some piece of music to see which are the areas that has been implicated. So segment-wise, I think the research should go on. Now, as of now, as a beginning, what we did was we took various people from different fields.
No, I meant the scientists who study creativity. Let's say if I'm not creative enough to
Okay. You mean to say I am not creative?
No, I'm not saying you're not creative.
No. Right, I understood. Yes. Probably, yes. I think you need to understand the nuances of creativity. Well, I am creative by myself because I do a lot of visual art. So, and I think the student who's also done this creativity study is also a good writer.
Okay.
So I think you need to have the nuances of creativity
Okay.
to carry out the nuance.
And a quick question to Dr. Krueger is, you talked about the oxytocin study. I'm sorry, I'm a lay person, so I didn't really understand the intricacies of it. However, you said that the people who have oxytocin, it was seen that they could empathize with people more. Is that what you said? So can it be said that people who have empathy in general, both men and women, I mean, obviously men cannot have it, but
Thank you.
do they have it? I don't know. I'm not a scientist, but do they have oxytocin at a high level naturally? I mean, let's say I'm an empathetic person by birth.
Yeah,
So
there are
is
studies.
it that is it that I have more oxytocin in
There are
me?
studies, they have more
Okay.
oxytocin and plasma, and also you can have different gene types. So you have here a lesion in a SNP, a specific oxytocin receptor gene. We have to study also.
Okay.
You behave more pro-social.
Okay.
But also, the selling point from this study is actually you can make people temporarily much more empathic, and then you can put a training on that. For example, people who have problems to be empathic, borderline psychopaths, you can make them temporary with oxytocin doses, empathic, and then you have a cognitive behavior training program to make a training. So my message is not buy oxytocin, everybody, and take it, right? That wouldn't, but to use it as a tool, as a training tool.
Okay. Thank
Okay,
you. Thank
sure.
you very much.
My name is Girisha. My question is to Madam Bindu. Thank you, Madam, for insightful presentation on how the meditation has impacted on the sleep patterns and so on. Was there any research done from your side on the mystical experiences also? I mean, extending the same question again, is it possible at all to identify unambiguous neural correlates which can identify mystical experiences?
I mean, in our study, we haven't looked at that aspect, the mystical experience and the neural correlates. I don't know. Maybe, I mean, I haven't come across also any
But I can jump in.
studies. Yeah.
So actually, we published recently a lesion paper with our Vietnam veterans. If you have a lesion in temporal lobe, they report more, for example, a mystic experience. So you have a questionnaire, and then you can compare people who have a lesion there. So that's on just when you have a lesion in specific areas. And I can give you later the resources for that one.
Yes, I have a brief question to three speakers. First one is to Professor Bindu. I was a little surprised that in the meditation groups, the REM sleep increased. And that was kind of surprising. I would have expected that the meditation group would have less anxiety, less nightmares, and less of the REM. I can understand that the non-REM increased and the REM should decrease. So there is a sort of balancing effect. So if you could respond to that. Then the question to Dr. Ganesh.
Can I respond to the
Yeah,
question
go
first?
ahead.
Yeah. See, there is a notion that meditators don't need that much of sleep. See, for example, we need to have 7 to 8 hours of good night sleep to carry out our, daily daytime function. So any normal adult human being, we need more, almost 7 to 8 hours. So there is a notion that following meditation, you need to have that much of quantity of sleep. But in our study, what we have observed is the total sleep duration is almost same, whether it is a control group or a novice or even the advanced practitioners. So that itself, gave us a lot of surprise. Okay, meditators also do require the normal quota of sleep, that is around 7 to 8 hours of sleep. That is one thing. Second, as you said, like we have observed both enhanced the slower sleep state as well as REM sleep state. And REM sleep state in a normal person, for example, 7 to 8 hours of sleep if you take, REM sleep occupies almost 20 to 25% of the total sleep time. So that is the usual quota. So here now we have observed an enhanced REM sleep state almost 30 to 32%. when compared to the 20 to 25% of the normal. So there could be, from functional point, aspect, if you look at REM sleep has got a lot of function to carry out. See, for example, if you look at cognitive functions, memory, consolidation, all these memory, especially memory consolidation takes place during both an REM sleep as well as the REM sleep. But REM sleep, the synaptic, various brain plasticity is occurring, events are occurring. Thus, it enhances the synaptic consolidation of memory. So that is one point we can think of. Like enhanced cognitive functions could be due to, the REM sleep. That is one thing. And REM sleep, now since we have observed that there is enhanced REM sleep, it's a very fertile, area for us to understand various aspects of sleep. For example, he has mentioned about the mystical experience. You can study a lot about the physiology of dream. And physiology of even the lucid dreaming, lucidity of the dreaming, that is, you are experiencing the dreaming. So that there are reports say that meditation enhances lucidity of dreaming. So we consider this as an opportunity to study, these aspects in meditators. Otherwise, enhanced REM sleep also is considered as an index of sleep satiety. Already it is satiated. So it is a period in between the deeper sleep state and the wake. So, you can easily also enter into a wake state. So there are ample, opportunities for us to study various aspects of sleep by studying meditators' sleep, especially the REM sleep.
My question to Dr. Ganesh is that the four virtues of Mudita, Maitri, Karuna and Upeksha are emphasized both in Patanjali's Yoga Sutra as well as in Buddhist tradition. You interpreted Upeksha as indifference to the world and worldly life. And but I think another way to look at Upeksha is not only that, but to be able to ignore the past and the future. So indifference to the time, that gives you freedom from the past and the future, and you stay focused in the present. You're open and receptive to the present. I'm a poet. I published 4 or 5 books of poetry. And for me, it is important to forget the last poem before I come up with a new idea and a new poem. So that's an important skill. So we need to interpret Upeksha as both freedom from space as well as freedom from time. That's important.
Very well said. What I meant is the same thing, because world, according to Vedantins, I identify myself as a Brahmavadin. There, world is nothing but the product of space and time. Desha and Kala, they are the products of avidya according to Vedanta. And world is nothing but product of space and time. And all this causation is product of space and time. Because of causation, we have the world. So, Upeksha to world means inclusive of both space and time. With that intention only I told, and you have wonderfully clarified it for the benefit of others as well. Thank you.
Okay. And my last question is to Dr. Rajan. I have published a paper called Cognitive Pause and Unload Hypothesis of Creativity and Meditation. And as you mentioned, the 4 stages, preparation, incubation. So the ability to pause is just as important as the ability to create and do something. In fact, one of the difficulty that most of us have is to be able to pause. We have to learn to pause, to smell the rose, to look at it, and then to write a poem about it or take a picture or paint or whatever. So do you have any measure of ability to pause an ongoing activity, which is inhibitory, of course, which is very important in the process of creating?
Well, in the behavioral study, we did give these pauses for the for the person, because the time was not a constraint. But when it comes to the imaging, you cannot keep the person more than 40 minutes inside the scanner. So what we are right now doing is correlating those results with the behavioral study to see if there is any correlation between these two, behavioral as well as the imaging studies. Yes, I do agree that pause is very, very important, and that is the stage of illumination.
Yes.
Because it can go on from days to years.
Yes. Thank you.
It's a question to the whole panel actually. We had the discussions on creativity and meditative practice, neuroeconomics from the neuroscience perspective. Let's take a different perspective. Recently I was going through the literature of artificial intelligence, and two examples I am giving. Ray Kurzweil, the author of Spiritual Machine, has developed a software program known as Cybernetic Poet, which analyzes the language module and can create poetry. David Cohen at University of California has developed a program, Aaron, which can draw painting on its own. My question and to the panel, even artificial intelligence people are saying computers can have religious experience. The question is, if you have a computer and the computer looks like a human being, and if he, she, it can draw, can write poetry and claim to have mystical experience, are we ready to confer consciousness and creativity to that computer program? Thank you.
Irrespective of the person or machine or whatsoever, whosoever has produced an art piece, if it meets the qualifications of an emotive art piece, then it's over. We don't bother from where that has come, but what the product is.
Thank you.
So from the viewpoint of aestheticians, Indian aestheticians, we don't have any problem at all. And even that thing is engineered, and that machine or whatever, that has been furnished with the human brain, is it not? That's why directly or indirectly the emotional world has involved. Unless the human emotions change, Indian aesthetics will not change.
Yeah, I also confer with this particular aspect, because I think if the machine is able to give us that kind of understanding and that kind of emotion that brings about, I think the whole concept of is, we can confer saying that it's no different from a person drawing it and the machine drawing it.
Thank you.
Taposh Datta. Well, just to the context of the last, I was a architect and designer of microprocessors, which are computers on a chip, for the last 25 years. And my opinion of, after designing computers, many different types of computers, is they are the dumbest things that we have created. They have absolutely no intelligence on their own. My question to Srimati Kutti is that twofold. One is that in trying to measure brain activities, have you used alternate practices that people follow? For example, people do 1 lakh japa, or name of God, or they continuously sing devotional songs in temples. Now, once that has been done for many years, like the many years of meditation, can that be studied, or have you seen such studies?
Yeah, at NIMHANS, not with my group, my colleagues, they are involved in these kind of studies, especially japas, the Gayatri Mantra, and looking at the brainwave changes, and even looking at the MRI, the brain structure changes. So there are studies, even the music, how the musical notes, how they can influence, how they can enhance your, well-being. Okay. So these kind of studies are going on in the institute.
Okay,
with my colleagues.
One can know more.
Yes.
And the second question is that there are apparently neuronal cells in the heart, in the stomach, and so on. Now, are parallel studies done of those to see what effect the rest of the body has?
Yeah, definitely. For example, I have just mentioned about the autonomic nervous system. So the whole internal organs, our lungs, our heart, our intestine, everything, each one has got a dual innervation from this autonomic nervous system. So we have the sympathetic system as well as the parasympathetic system. For example, you take heart. Sympathetic system activate the heart, heart rate, blood pressure, and so on. Contraction, contraction of the cardiac muscle. Whereas parasympathetic is to relax all this. So there should be a balance between sympathetic and parasympathetic. So we call it a sympathovagal balance. And if sympathovagal balance is very important to have, I told you about the brain integration. Even for the brain integration, you should have all this balance. So if this balance is altered, especially yours, it is usually altered towards sympathetic. So if there is a sympathetic predominance, lot of, like you can even see cardiac dysfunctions. From cardiac dysfunction till neurodegeneration, we can look into these aspects and study. So these are also important to have a proper body-mind harmony and to have a normal, functioning of the system.
Myself, Anil Kumar. I have a question for Professor Frank. Do you think hurting or harming others is a natural phenomenon? And related with it, does it always involve a certain level of self-consciousness? Hurting others or harming others is a natural phenomenon for the human beings.
Yeah,
and does it involve always a certain level of self-consciousness?
I'm cautious with the word consciousness. I'm talking about, I think this is hardwired in our brain that we can empathize in it, other gets hurt, and we know already what brain area. So there are the mirror neurons, etc. So when I see that something happened to you, one theory explains the simulation theory. I do the same thing happens in me, and automatically I understand it. And that's on a lower level. That would be, I don't know if I can say this is conscious, but this is automatically. But for example, you also have to understand the mental states of the person. There's other areas involved. There you need more the prefrontal cortex. You have to put yourself in the shoes of the other ones. But I think every normal developed brain has the capacity, and we see it that in some brain or some brain disorders, it doesn't work. And that's why they have, for example, problems to understand others. They know verbally the rule, don't hurt, but they don't feel it. And we know both. We know the rule and we also feel it. And that's the difference.
But that's about punishment, but harming itself, what does it involve when we think about harming others? Is it something which is happening natural to me? Why do we need to harm others? It's something like, the other species, they do it, on purpose, they have certain...
Yeah, they do second-party punishment. The monkeys or etc., there's experiments. If you take food away, they hurt the other person, the other ape, right? But what I'm arguing is there are specific other brain areas needed to do third-party punishment, and we as a human species in our evolution had to come up to solve that problem. That's why I developed bigger, larger prefrontal cortex so we can more deciding, more taking the emotion out, etc. But I don't know if I get the first one, but hurting, I see that on the facial expression, I can see that somebody get hurt, right? So if you do the same, internally, my mirror neurons lighting up and doing the same thing, and that's why I know that you got hurt. So basically, on facial expression, etc., I can see that somebody got hurt. It's not theoretically. I see it physically. Somebody got punched, or somebody's doing a specific face expression and a body expression. And there's experiments, if you take them apart, right? You do a face expression, but a different body expression. People got confused because that's so hardwired that both go together. I don't know if that answers your question. Yeah.
My question is connected to this. Do we have a primordial urge for violence? Is there any evidence in the brain? Because violence is so much. It was connected to that, that's why I asked.
Yeah, sure. We also can be aggressive if needed. Why does it? We can both. There's also an urge to survive. If our survival depends on, in-group, out-group, right? 30,000 years ago, there was protection of in-group, out-group, and there's violence going on. You have to be also aggressive, but that's different brain areas. And normally those are you can control them. And that's why we have also prefrontal cortex. For example, if you have specific lesion in the prefrontal cortex, the ventral medial prefrontal cortex, people are more impulsive, more aggressive. So basically, our brain is always on break. We have this, and we can also initiate it. I think shouldn't we have that also, or is that something? I think for me, it's a survival tool. Yep.
Namaste. This is Sumantran Ray from IIT. My first question is to the neurophysiologists and neuropsychologists, particularly Professor Bindu Kutty Madam. So, what are the different ways of building cognitive reserve, and also what are the ways of cortical tuning, and can these be effectively utilized to deal with common disorders like, let's say, anxiety and so on, to build resilience against depression and so on?
Yeah, very interesting question. Yeah, two aspects you have to keep in mind here. I have just mentioned only the cognitive reserve capacity of the brain, whereas there is another term called as the brain reserve capacity. So we have two advantages. One is the brain reserve, and the other one is the cognitive reserve. So brain reserve is, that differ from the normal is mainly in terms of quantity. For example, the number of cells, nerve cells, and their connections will be more when compared to the normal. Whereas cognitive reserve capacity, you are able to develop it over a period of time through techniques like, for example, meditation. So both has their own advantages, and definitely these have definite implications in the management of various disorders, like, as you said, anxiety disorders, especially anxiety disorders. You can develop cognitive behavioral therapy program, various rehabilitatory programs we will be able to develop to activate or to enhance the cognitive reserve capacities. Whereas brain reserve, for example, I can just give you an example, like there are reports on Alzheimer disease. Some people who have the same equal pathology, Alzheimer pathology of the brain is equal degree, whereas they will not manifest it clinically. That can be due to even the increased brain reserve capacity. So we can tap these, through various methods, like various rehabilitation programs.
Cortical tuning?
Cortical tuning also. See, for example, cognitive retraining programs, various appropriate brain games, I feel, or cognitive task. Definitely, you will be able to, enhance these properties, and that can be implemented, in therapy or management of disease.
Thank you.
I'm Sashi from JNCSR Bangalore. So my question is again to Bindu ma'am. So this is regarding binaural beats or the brainwave entrainment. So where we try to induce preferred frequencies or waves. They use this to take brain into certain state, like peaceful state or meditative state. So nowadays we have many beats like this out where they say it will work for lucid dreaming and astral projection as well. So what are your comments on this? It worked for me. So the lucid dreaming I tried. And
Yeah, there are studies to induce. See, for example, you said lucid dreaming.
Yeah.
So you can induce these dreaming states by various methods. One is like activating the brain through, like inducing some pulses. So ultimately, you would enhance the brain activity and induce that kind of, for example, in sleep state.
And they use this also to go into deep sleep state and other.
Yeah, there are, see, for example, if you are, giving a kind of lullabies, for example, that is the frequency of these lullabies are equivalent to theta waves, so that can induce sleep And once you are, you induce sleep, definitely you can enter into different stages of sleep. So there are various ways by which you can study this, mimic these stages and study the various aspects. For example, even lucid dreaming, there are many studies, through, just providing pulses, providing current stimulation, then activating the brain areas and studying.
So if all these are possible, then why so much pharmacology and all? So we can just go into sleep by using this. Also, what's the need of meditation and learning meditation? Because just listening to certain sounds can...
Correct. See, that depends upon. See, for example, when you are dealing with, major depression, so that depends upon the treatment options for a particular disease, condition. For example, I can give you two examples. One is a mild depression case and one is a major depressive studies. In a mild depression, we have got some studies, to show that just Sudarsana Kriya Yoga, it is a variant of pranayama. That itself is very enough, to recover from that mild dysthymia, we call it as. Whereas major depressive illness, you cannot get recovery, total recovery just by, through this technique. You may require very effective drugs there. So maybe adjuvant therapy. See, you can use meditation or yoga as an adjuvant therapy for the existing pharmaco treatments. So these can be applied in a different way,
Okay, so it's well known that artists, however big they are in the field and all of that, they undergo this period called an artist block. And I want to know why that happens and what is the science behind it, like the science of creativity and all of that. Why do people undergo an artist block? I mean, it's really frustrating because even I have gone through one, and you cannot create anything and you cannot write anything, paint anything, whatever. Why does that happen?
I think there are various reasons to it. Probably your own mental set at that point of time, or it is that you're not satisfied with what you've done and you want to improvise it, and then hence you put forward. Even I've gone through these phases. So what happens if I analyze myself? Probably the pressing need at that time was something else, not my painting. So I would just put it across. So there's no one particular reason, there are very many reasons to it. And hence you put it and say, okay, let me do it at a later point of time.
Okay. No,
that's why that period of illumination, you see, it goes on for years sometime.
Okay. Is there like a science behind it?
Not that I have come across anything. Okay. Probably there are, all the youngsters can look into each aspect of this and take up a research.
One word from the viewpoint of Indian aesthetics, though deliberate mentioning of such artist block and all is not mentioned, but a poet, scholar, aesthetician and philosopher of Kashmir and devout student of Abhinav Gupta is Kshemendra, a versatile genius. He in his Kavi Kanthavarana, that is a guide for poets, there he mentions 100 topics, 100 areas of skills and proficiencies which a poet is expected to have. There, some of them are directly addressing to this problem. And accordingly, we'll be knowing deviating to another art certainly removes certain amount of artistic blocks. If I am blocked in one aspect of creativity, for example, if I am poet and I am finding some hindrance in my versification, shift to some other art, some other course and some other interaction, then it will avoid. And also taking a break and vivikta janase vitvam parvataranya darshanam smashana abhiruchi, like that, so many things he mentions, even going to the burial yard and then getting stimulated. We have something like one poison will be a remedy to another poison, like that. So many other aspects, such aspects are very well mentioned. Such practical things. Indian aesthetics like Ayurveda, which is very clinical, so is Indian aesthetics very practical. It is not aware of all these experimentations which the psychologists and psychiatrists conduct, but it will go by experience. And so the pathology may not be known, the laboratory picture may not be known to an Ayurveda practitioner, but he will be knowing the clinical diagnosis. Likewise, an Indian aesthetic Indian aesthetician will be knowing such things. By looking into such texts, you will be getting some or the other tidbits by virtue of which some deeper research can be conducted in that direction. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Shampurna Ghosh from Calcutta University. My question is to Dr. Krueger. I want you to, I want you to comment on the fact, don't you think third-party punishment is more of a societal task than a cognitive task? Because we all live in different strata of our society, and those stratas implies rules and norms on us. So we tend to think in different way in all those stratas. And I think this question is now very much prevalent in India. So I would really want you to comment on that.
Yeah, but at the end, there are people doing it, right? I mean, you learn the social norm about punishment through the society, but at the end, it's encoded in your brain. And we give judges or juries the task, and everybody learned it. I don't see what do you mean by society. I mean, at the end, there are people. You are raised in a specific society under specific norms. There might be difference between different societies, and there's different punishment for different. But at the end, I agree with you. The culture shapes the beliefs, kind of norms, but those are encoded in the brain, and I would argue these are the same brain areas. It doesn't matter what culture you are in.
Yeah, but I do something in my society and it will be regarded as a punishment. Yeah. And same thing, if it is done in your society, it might not be regarded as a guilt at all. So there's this difference. And I think it's in our social norms and culture and not in the cognition.
No, at the end it has to be in the brain somewhere coded.
Yeah, that's
true.
true.
I learned it. I got raised in Germany. I get the different culture beliefs, and then I go to the US. For example, Germany is against death penalty, right? In the US, this is an option. They think this is the most part of punishment, what you can do, but it doesn't work. So I think the culture shapes different norms, but at the end, those norms get stored in everybody's brain, and those are the same brain areas. But my insula doesn't light up in this society because I think it's not a norm violation. Yeah? Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Good morning. I am Binsi Matthew, research scholar from MS University. I have a clarification, just it's not a question, to Dr. Bindu regarding the meditation. You have mentioned that the higher mental abilities, the functions of the mental cognitive abilities, enhances the meditation, the vipassana. Have you come across in your studies, or can you tell us in particular the cognitive abilities of the higher order? What are the abilities regarding memory, problem solving, such as you have found any difference in these novices as well as in the senior meditators?
In general, meditative practices enhance cognitive functions. And we have various ways to analyze the cognitive functions. Neurophysiologically, we measure certain wave patterns, and we can, analyze. Initially, we have observed. Now, there are sometime, you may not see much differences in the amplitude. See, many of the studies have showed, but it is not our study, we didn't see much differences. Okay. But otherwise, many studies have shown that meditation proficiency enhance cognitive functions. Okay, so there are clear-cut differences between the novices as well as the, the seniors.
Has it enhanced the behavior pattern too?
Definitely, it molds. That is what I said about, we consider that as a mental attribute, higher mental. Yeah. So definitely you are developing, evolving in your mental efficiencies. Okay. So definitely this meditation enhance, especially the long-term meditative practices, help in the total transformation actually.
Okay, thank you so much.
Last but not the least, I am Krishna Swami, an independent researcher regarding the neutrino observatory which is coming up in Tamil Nadu, Thene district. I have a question for each one of the panelists, if time permitting and hunger permitting. The first one is to Professor Krueger. How does food impact punishment tendencies, sir? How does food we take in impact punishment tendencies?
Yeah. Are you referring to a special published paper? I think they did it with judges. They had breakfast and they behaved differently after breakfast. Yeah. And I would also have given a different talk after lunch because I'm very hungry now. No, just kidding. But no. Are you referring to this study or? No, but there was actually studies. You know, sometimes scientists have a lot of time to think about it. Fancy study, and they did this. They asked judges. Yeah. Did it answer? Yeah.
It answers me. Number 2, this is for Shatavadani Ganesh Ji. Way back in the, I will leave you all within 2-3 minutes, sorry. I had the opportunity in 1979 when I was in my teens, a program done by a 72-year-old Ashtavadani Ramaya Pillai in Tamil Nadu. And he was
a blind man, is it?
Yeah, blind man, that's the point. And he was able to tell the name of the Pakistani cricket captain Asif Iqbal, then captain Asif Iqbal, in a reverse manner. That was astounding, especially for a person who couldn't even pronounce Asif Iqbal, but he was able to do that because of his faculties. My question is to Ganeshji, the trauma victims, dementia patients, Parkinson's syndrome patients, do they lose their faculties? The multitasking and wearing many hats faculties.
This question should have been answered by the other people of the panel because it is not directly connected with my topic. I honestly feel multitasking is working at 2 levels. One will be taken seriously and the other will be in hibernation. That will be going on. Whether it is Ashtavadhanam and Shatavadhanam or Sahasravadhanam, the number is big. But it will be a sequential one, but will be switching over very fast. That's all. That's what my experience says. 2 things cannot occupy the same place at the same time. So one will be in preference and the other will come immediately afterwards. That's how the process of Avadhana, the art of Avadhana goes on. And you told about Ramaya Pillai's reverse way of telling. I add one thing from Andhra Pradesh. Madabhushi Venkatacharya, he not just repeating the names in the reverse order. First ever hearing any verse for the first time hearing, he used to reproduce it directly as it is. And then second time he used to recite the whole verse in the reverse order.
Oh, great. In Telugu.
Yes. Madabhushi Venkatacharya of 19th century and early 20th century.
That's great to hear, sir.
I'll just answer this question. Yes, they do lose their cognitive abilities, especially the dementia. It is known a degenerative disorder. Parkinson's patient, Alzheimer's, they do lose their faculties slowly over a period of time.
Very sorry to hear. This to Madam Bindu, this is regarding the comparative aspects of various meditative tools or various meditative systems. Like Vipassana she had been elaborating on. I had the opportunity 20 years back to undergo a Vipassana 10-day course. From what I understand, the sensation watching, observing the sensations is of prime importance in Vipassana. And something like Sri Ravi Shankar's Sudarshana Kriya, it is more biological, more breath oriented. Number 3, I have been practicing the japa meditation, Om Namah Shivaya. All the 3, do the 3 streams of meditation have the same final results for your testing?
Yeah, see what is the purpose of meditation? We may use different techniques of meditation. For example, like we are studying Vipassana, Raja Yoga meditation. See, Raja Yoga meditation is mainly of a contemplative technique, whereas Vipassana is of mindfulness meditation. So there are various techniques. These are all tools for you to get something. Like, say, for example, understanding or achieving the mind-brain harmony, and integrating the brain functions, and also maybe even higher states of consciousness through meditative practices. So, but there will be differences. See, for example, we cannot expect the same kind of result from each meditative technique. Ultimately, you are achieving. See, you may be achieving that through different ways, you know. So ultimately, even, for example, positive emotions or ecstatic emotions, you may be achieving it. Even, say, for example, even without having any change or measurable change in the brain activity. So that shows that there is, like a dominance of mind over matter. So various ways.
Mind over matter, and all roads lead to the mountain.
Yes.
And the final question to Ma'am Jamuna.
To add one more point.
Yes.
About mental faculties, they losing their capability in mental or physical malady, that has been mentioned in Indian aesthetics. A 10th century Sanskrit aesthetician and poet playwright, polyglot, polymath Rajeshekara in his Kavi Mimamsa saying 8 are the mothers of poetry or creativity. Ashtau mataraha kavitvasya. Their dakshyam, smritihi, dardhyam, like that he says, physical and mental capabilities, they are very important. It's so obvious, I think. Well understood and
directly impinging on the consciousness. Directly. The final question to Dr. Jamuna. This is fairly sensitive and quite contemporaneous. We all should probably know this and probably try and answer this. My hypothesis is this. More direct art impinges on the subject more than imaginative arts do. I shall give 2 examples. The 2 examples are of creative geniuses, but only the flawed geniuses. One is Reichsfuhrer Adolf Hitler. I have a set of paintings of Adolf Hitler's, of course copies, not the originals. He has drawn a castle on a mount from where he belongs, actually an Austrian village, near an Austrian village. And the castle is slightly inclined towards the left. And another, an ancient building's painting he had done in his younger days, and it has slightly tilted to the right. Thereby, almost all understood that this genius, though a criminal, is flawed basically. This is one thing. I have not completed. The second one is a very contemporaneous one.
Excuse me, sir, we have other people waiting here. Please. Please.
Okay.
Yeah, because we have only 5 minutes left and 2 people are waiting here. So the answer
Yeah, we can discuss this.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Hi, I am Aprup. My question is to Professor Krueger. Specifically about, you talked about administering this oxytocin.
Oxytocin,
yeah. Oxytocin. Are you forcing some ethical issues, or is this framework already defined for the use of oxytocin?
Sorry, acoustically, can you repeat that?
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
Do you foresee some ethical issues in use of oxytocin in society?
Ethical issues.
Or is there any already framework defined on that use, doses for
If I'm
Are
sure.
there any ethical issues using oxytocin?
Why I'm using oxytocin? No.
Ethical issues.
I'm asking this particularly, do you foresee?
In the experiments you are using oxytocin.
What are the doses?
That's
And whether there is any
ethical issues to use it or
I mean, there's standards. You're using how many of this in each of the nose, the nasal, just like in a community, like there's animal studies. Basically, some of the stuff has to get to the brain, right? So they measured in animal studies, then they would say, this is I don't know, in our case, 40 universal units, this is the one, and then you have to do half on this node, that one. So this is this is what every study does, the same. So it's your argument that you give more, that you be more pro-social then, or?
Yeah. So,
I mean,
particularly for cows, it is now for the increasing milk, something like that. If on social issues, it will have some other implications.
do they have any other social implications?
What oxytocin does?
Yeah.
I mean, it's basically, the trend is like 10 years ago, you would get a nice science paper or a nature paper, it would say oxytocin increases your belief in God or something like that, right? Or something like that. But the basic, remember the slide I showed, basically oxytocin is working on a very low level. So it reduces anxiety, this is stress, anxiety, and that has also shown in animal studies, etc. It's more salient, so you're more focusing attention stuff. So it's on a lower level, and that influences in a higher cognitive level. So it has nothing to do with belief in God. Basically, have you heard about the read me in the eye task? So you have to see the eyes, and you get emotion, and you have to, right? If you give you oxytocin for the tough ones, you get better. The idea is not that you are now better mentalizing it, but you are more focusing the salience of one, you're focusing more on that. And autistic kids, for example, which are not looking at the eyes, they are more focused on the eyes. And that's, so basically the trend is, and there's a lot of critique in the field, it's like, it's a basic low-level one, which then influence higher cognitive. So no science paper anymore about oxytocin, does this or this or that.
When they said more.
So my question is more related to arts and creativity. According to our Indian culture or any other culture, do our ancestor has classified the arts in based on the type of arts, like dancing and playing the instruments require more motor actions, where poetry and writer does not require any motor actions, they just thinking out of the box. And maybe based on this, do you have any classification related to science, also related to brain? Any classification is there on the arts? I heard that there are 64 arts. On what basis these 64 arts are divided like that?
Thank you. It's a very good question. But in our tradition, we don't have any such classification connected with brain and all. Because in our tradition, that has been what I told, it is more clinical and less of laboratory. But 64 arts, that mentioning is there in Vatsyayana's Kama Sutra, and there are other systems also. For example, in the Buddhist work, Lalita Vistara, we have 83, and also in the Jain tradition of Prabandha Chintamani, 72. Like that, there are various types of arts, not just 64. But later scholars, they have, based on the nature of art, they have divided utilitarian art, pure art, fine arts, applied arts, something like that. But in the Natya Shastra, supposed to be the oldest work connected with the art, practice and analysis in Indian context, there we have, though special categories are not made, they have given details of training. By that itself we will be knowing. A dancer is supposed to get trained in this way, while a singer in some other fashion, while the poet in some other. So specializations have been made. By that we can as well infer. For example, in Natya Shastra, he is expected, a dancer is expected to know so many things because it is a composite art. But not all these are needed for a poet. But poet should essentially have, it's a desirable quality, not an essential quality. A poet like Kalidasa, by internal evidences, we can clearly know that he had good understanding of music, both in veena and on percussion instrument like mridangam. And also he was adept in theatrical arts, and he had good knowledge of painting. That way we can infer, but no deliberate mentioning. And then how the body acts, all these things are not given in detail, but we can know they had an eye of all these things.
Okay, then let's conclude the session. First of all, I thank all the speakers, Shadavdani R. Ganesh, Bindu Kutti, Jamuna Rajan, and Frank Krueger for giving us a very, very beautiful lectures, and the audience who has asked stimulating questions. The concluding remark could be, we started with meditation and yoga, and just like if I can borrow the title of a paper from Professor Sangeeta Menon, where the mind challenges the brain to convert. Then we moved to Shadavdani R. Ganesh's talk, where he described how emotions and experiences are converted into expression. And the Professor Jamuna gave the neural basis of that. And Professor Krueger suggested if that creativity is going against the social rules, how it can become, how it can invite third-party punishment, and what is the neural basis of that. So all these results shows that the conversion point, again I am taking words from Shadavdani R. Ganesh, that everything well matches in art. So the future of consciousness studies, cognition studies, everything will be analyzing arts, humanities and social science. Thank you very much.
I have to personally thank Dr. Sangeeta for the kind invitation, and also Niyaz and all the participants and the panelists. It's a really enriching and encouraging session. Thank you.